that Val Johnson, the famous Stephen, Minnesota case, come up to that. And we analyzed that sighting in some detail. This year, I decided to approach it from a similar yet different angle. I tried to attract as many academics, scientists, if you wish, to attend a seminar, not inviting any specific papers, not inviting any specific topic, but to have them sit in with a group of ufologists, since I had known that John and Dave were going to be coming, and see what we could arrive at regarding some very key questions with regards to science, UFOs. And in my handout that all of you received, I had outlined some suggested questions, which were by no means definite questions, to see where we could end up and what we could decide on the relationship between science and UFOs. My suggested questions included: should scientists study UFO reports? What proof is needed for the existence of UFOs? Will this proof ever come? Are UFOs physical or psychological? What discipline is best suited to study UFOs? Is it likely that extraterrestrial life exists? Could extraterrestrial spacecraft be detectable by conventional detection systems? What natural phenomena could explain UFOs? Should the public be better educated about UFOs? And the 10th one, possibly the most significant, is their value in UFO research. Now, before we get into this, I thought that we should all... for those of you who don't know, this is Dave Hazel, sorry, I keep getting that wrong. I'm Chris Rutkowski. This is Guy Westcott, Vladimir Samasko, Martin Klettenbrock, Richard Gordon, and John Musgrave. And Richard Bachanko. And before, I'd like to mention that over the past 30 years of ufology, there's been some varied attitudes in science regarding UFOs. There's been a large number of scientists who wish to totally ignore the phenomenon. Others have chosen to debunk it in an anti-ufological manner, such as the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal. There have been, fortunately, a few scientists who have taken to knowledge in their own fields, into analyzing reports and other items that would fall into the category of ufology, so that they can better understand the phenomenon and apply it to the world situation, what's happening now with regards to UFOs. The idea behind this seminar is not so much as to definitely say UFOs exist, UFOs do not exist. It's the idea is not to say one way or another that such and such a case is not worthy of examination. We should only look into this case and not that case. We have to retain an open mind, and because ufologists are generally unfunded, that is, there is nobody giving them money to look into a certain case or perform a certain type of research, they have to approach the subject in a manner that may be deemed scholarly or unscientific in many cases by many individuals, which is a very unfair treatment because they are, as a matter of fact, unfunded. Because they are unfunded, they have to approach the subject from a zero budget attitude. And despite this, one must realize that the ufologists are doing the best they can. Scientists generally, it is my personal opinion, are not examining UFOs as much as they should be. They are not giving UFOs the importance they should be. not necessarily as they exist in a physical sense, but also as they exist in a psychological and sociological sense, that is the true UFO phenomenon. And in that regard, seminars such as this, which are going on at various times all over the world, are a very much needed type of format, because science should examine UFOs. And it's with that in mind that I'd like to begin the discussions regarding ufology and science. Now, the first question that I had suggested that might be raised and discussed was, should scientists study UFO reports? Well, I believe in my opening address I made that point in my own opinion. But I'd like some other personal evaluations of that, possibly from some of the academic members here. Should scientists study UFO reports?
You're speaking to the converted, so I must skip into that and go on to the next question.
Oh, I see.
No, I don't mean less. Perhaps one should, but one's not going to if one's too lazy. So.
if one is too lazy?
Let's go on to the next.
Okay. What proof is needed for the existence of UFOs then? Norm Davison remarked to me that give him a certain type of alloy and he'll prove to you that UFOs are definitely extraterrestrial, and he'll prove without a shadow of a doubt they are. Now, do such alloys definitely comprise proof that UFOs exist?
I don't think so. You're answering a question that wasn't really asked. Looking at it that way, when you're asking what proof is necessary for UFOs, the only proof you need is a UFO report. Since that report exists, therefore the unidentified phenomenon, whatever it is in the first place, exists. What you're saying is, give me a piece of metal and then I'll give you a possible answer as to what this unidentified is. So the fact that a report exists proves that the phenomenon exists. Now what it is something else.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have all the proof we need now. It's just a matter of sifting through it and finding out which is true and which is false. Like Dave says, the proof is in the reports. People are seeing these objects, whatever they are. It's just a matter to find out what they are.
Sure, I think so. Ufology isn't a science and never will be. It's a process of analysis. Really, you've got some unknowns. Okay, let's analyze the data and then find out what we're dealing with. Maybe dealing with 15, 20 different phenomena. We don't know. Until you identify one of the phenomena, you're not going to be able to shove it off into any scientific discipline and say, okay, it's a meteorological phenomenon, or it's an astronomical phenomenon, or it's a parapsychological phenomenon, or what? You may be dealing with a whole pile of different phenomena.
Right. That question was a deliberate red herring about the existence of UFOs. Very often people will come up to me, for example, and say, well, do you believe in UFOs? And I have to say, yes, I believe that unidentified flying objects are seen by a great many people. The question they mean to ask is, do flying saucers from another world or dimension or what have you exist? And that's an entirely different question, and on that I have to say no, because I don't see any proof one way or another of one theory. And it's that problem that a lot of people get hung up on, and it's that problem that leaves the media pouncing upon hapless ufologists in their pursuit of sincere efforts in trying to figure out UFO reports. In fact, this idea will go along with the third question, will this proof ever come? The proof of, for example, extraterrestrial life, extraterrestrial spacecraft visiting Earth. Well, again, it's hard to say if there are extraterrestrial spacecraft out there, and this again goes back to the famous formula which was developed at the conferences on extraterrestrial life. If there can be determined that there may exist a certain number of civilizations out there, what is the probability that one of them has achieved a level where they can in fact get to Earth and for some reason be flying around our atmosphere in such and such a craft? So if that is true, then there is the possibility that this proof may come. Is the astronomical evidence there that such civilizations exist?
No.
No.
It's very succinctly put.
Is there any possibility that such proof will come, that extraterrestrial civilizations are out there?
Only when contact is made. If and when it is.
From our end or their end?
Either.
I seem to remember reading recently, and again, I can't quote the source now, it was an astronomer in the States who said that because of our understanding of astronomy, now we have the proof that there is no life out there. And I think he based that on a statistical analysis of the age of stars in our galaxy. He assumed, okay, if we're going to be visited from anyone, they're going to be coming to our galaxy. And apparently the number of stars out there that are much older than our particular sun in the scale of solar evolution is phenomenal. And if, according to, again, our theories of evolution, life has developed in these galaxies, they would have visited us long ago in these stars. So I don't know, is there any fact in that from some of you astronomers?
Well, there's a number of papers being written recently, including one, you say it was infamous or famous, by Michael Hart. He was the one who pointed it out to me, in fact, saying that since UFOs do not exist, and if extraterrestrial life existed, they would have visited us, and since they haven't, there isn't any extraterrestrial life, and therefore we are alone in the universe.
I seem to recall the problem with that paper is that the basis for the statement UFOs don't exist are two little references. I think it's numbers 12 and 13. You look up 12 and 13, and it is Menzel's book, or one of Menzel's books, and Klass's book. And he makes no effort to discuss those books in any detail, or discuss the references in any detail. He just says, since UFOs don't exist, reference 12 and 13, therefore, blah, 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 blah. And that, again, shows you the anti-ufology which exists today in the form of the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, where you have individuals going to great lengths to show that UFOs do not exist and get carried away to the point where they lose their objectivity. So, in that regard, the papers have their own problems in them. I agree that one of the arguments against extraterrestrial life is that surely if they're out there, they should be contacting us somehow if they're that advanced.
Well, I don't think that's the only problem. If there was a paper some time ago, which I think is ignored by Michael Hart, by John Ball, it's entitled The Zoo Hypothesis. And it just says we're a zoo. There are all these people sitting out there and you look at us. This might well be true. I don't see any reason why not. Or put it another way, what I sometimes like to think of as the bird watching hypothesis. If you want to go out and see birds making a nest, you don't stalk up there and flap your wings wildly and see if there's a bird out there on its nest. You try and hide yourself. You try and make yourself inconspicuous. We are, in fact, in a very interesting stage of our evolution. We are changing from animal with very little technical ability to an animal with extraordinarily high technical ability. We're doing it extremely rapidly. And I would imagine that if any extraterrestrial life is wandering around, extraterrestrial intelligence, advanced civilization is wandering around monitoring planetary civilizations, they would be extremely interested in our particular state.
You had a graduate student doing a study on transition civilizations.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Well, they're pretty unsuccessful in making themselves inconspicuous.
Well, there was always Jean Fallet's idea that the UFOs were really an excellent way of disguising them, because what they really are is a disguise, it's a flying saucer. I know I possibly believe these extraordinary stories that come out.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, that flying saucers, UFOs have nothing to do with extraterrestrial craft, which may well exist. You have two possibilities at least, and then more may well occur to you.
There's a whole string of speculative hypotheses that you can develop from this sort of thing. And the zoo hypothesis was one that intrigued me for quite a long time, and still does, because it definitely is one possibility.
Which would certainly leave, as you say, the question of what these UFOs are very open. As you say, if UFOs are really extraterrestrial craft, then they're very poor.
Yes, well, the fact that they would actually have all these bright lights late at night if they were conducting secret landings and sort of thing, that seems to preclude such an...
Perhaps you might feel that you wouldn't have to be that inconspicuous. But you mustn't go around disturbing people. You mustn't have doubts, these feelings on craft and go. You certainly mustn't have close encounters with the third kind.
So they may be testing our reactions too.
Yes, all sorts. Yes, exactly.
Yes, we are an experiment.
Yes.
Another question that people very often ask me is, why haven't they come down and shown themselves? Why don't they land on the front steps of such and such and come and show themselves? I think the biggest argument on that is that I certainly, if I was an extraterrestrial, various wars going on, I'd be very, very leery of setting foot anywhere that might have any possibility of dangerous humanoid-type people stampeding and shooting guns and what have you at them.
Scorpion may be an inferior animal, but you won't go around stepping on it.
That's right. So there are some interesting ideas that can develop from such an attitude. Fourth question I had down was, are UFOs physical or psychological? Now, we get down to the nitty-gritty problem. I've often stated in a few papers that if UFOs are not physical, then they are at the very least psychological and sociological. And this comes around to the point that the UFO phenomenon exists in reality, because we can turn on our televisions and radios and we can hear accounts of UFOs flying around, scaring the living daylights out of people. We can watch Project UFO on TV. We can watch an episode of Maude and watch Maude see a UFO. We can have all sorts of things happen. In fact, we even have the greatest American hero getting his magical powers from a UFO. So we're led back to the point where there is a phenomenon concerning UFOs around right now that is indeed affecting everybody's life. And it's in that regard that a sociological and psychological study should be involved, at least to encourage some sort of scientific involvement, because if there is no physical essence to UFOs, then you're left with the problem of then why do we have all these mythological tales of flying saucers around right now? Anybody wish to comment on that? Okay.
It's a hard one. There's plenty of food for thought there. Chances are it is already being studied very thoroughly in terms of psychological reactions and sociological reactions and so forth, but by the UFOnauts rather than by the establishment. The establishment is always extremely conservative, especially with ideas that threaten their established values and theories.
Yeah.
About two hours ago on Quirks and Quarks, there was a report on, I think it's a Mrs. Price, the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you may have picked it up too. And she was suffering from a particular kind of epilepsy, which caused her to have communication with the beyond, you might say. And this obviously infected a lot of people of ordinary common sense, to the point where that particular sect now numbers some 3.5 million believers.
Maybe not the origin. I missed the first half.
No, the lady has been shown through post-mortem research, actually, to have suffered from a particular kind of epileptic seizure, which is characterized by exactly the sort of recall and visions and during the seizure, but total recall afterwards. and tendency toward great volubility and also the inclination to write volubly. The lady wrote 100,000 pages of text about her various experiences. And
This was the origin of
she was the lady who started it.
That sounds very much like the origin of the Mormon religion.
Right. So most religions start that way. Somebody has a vision.
Yeah.
Once they hear God talking to them. Maybe they're right.
Yeah.
Hard to tell.
Yeah,
That's the way Christianity started.
Yeah.
Is that
True.
True.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Did you suppose that the description of the celestial city in the Revelations is the product of mescaline?
Well, I know what that Leary and Robert Anton Wilson and others of the like have published some ideas on the relationship to LSD experiences and contact with other beings and other dimensions or planes or whatever you'd like to call them.
John Lilly has too, the guy who researches dolphins.
Right.
There's some curious consistencies, though, about some of the UFO reports. I haven't studied this enough, but one thing that struck me rather very forcibly, in fact, was that Jacques Vallée's finding that the UFO encounters peaked at 3 a.m. I mean, literally, they peaked. So there's a strong peak at 10 p.m., where you'd expect it. And then there's a somewhat smaller peak at 3 a.m. Now, very few people are out at 3 a.m. And so if you make allowance for the fact that a few people are out there, you get an enormous peak at 3 a.m. and the apparently much larger peak at 10 p.m. is just gone. Now, that doesn't somehow fit in with the epileptic or something which I didn't think of epilepsy, but these psychological ideas which I've played around.
Well, only crazy people and astronomers are out at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Perhaps that's it, but why so sharp? Why not at 2 a.m.? It's a very sharp peak.
Get crazy body rhythms. Get crazy body rhythms.
Perhaps, yes.
Does it shift?
That's possible.
Does it shift with daylight savings?
Oh dear.
That's a very good point. Well, that's the way
Richard.
that's the way the solar signal from the sun is discovered. That it suddenly shifted with a change in time. How reliable is Vallée's data?
Very, I think. Exactly.
I mean, it's a difficult question to answer actually, because you must have an awful lot of noise in these. I guess he uses the Centre for UFO reports, and he's got a whole collection of them, which he's put on computer cards. And since he's an astrophysicist, I hope he's actually corrected it. But it's quite possible.
Yeah.
He's also a computer scientist.
I
so
found
I-
out he works on stuff that's been very refined. And I don't think he does much research.
Really?
I don't know that he's really an astrophysicist. He's a science.
Well, it's relevant to some things. I suppose you can care.
Like
Well,
masters maybe in astronomy. But I don't find his stuff very relevant.
He did most of his actual field work in the 60s. Since he came over to the States, he hasn't been doing much.
I must say I don't even find this time business, and I find it very hard to believe much of it. Again, it's sort of very selective. It's a matter of what sieve you use, I think, to accept results. And I must say, I guess I find it very difficult because I find these strange kind of patterns and correlations people get, because it's sort of like someone goes out and collects all, identifies. And it goes out, say in the afternoon, and makes a catalog, a listing of all the identified things. Airplanes, robins, frisbees, footballs, mosquitoes, gnats, anything that's common that's flying in the air. You make an identification, and then you start to be all sorts of funny correlation patterns. I don't know what you get out of it. Because it's like 3 in the morning and so on. Because you read some other people, and they'll tell you some other sorts of things. It's all based on sidereal time, where the position of the sun is, and the position of the stars aren't such as scientists are suggesting. All kinds of funny patterns which I find rather occult.
Yeah.
Unless I begin to understand on what basis you just find funny correlations and then coming up and saying, hey, I discovered something. I find that difficult.
Well, I found that
particularly, as I say, with stuff like Balays, because my experience is that basically his reports are second and third hand. Certainly has some of the Canadian stuff. Basically, he'll have a report maybe he got out of the journal, and then you look back and the journal actually got it from Adamski's book or Leslie's book or something like that. So it's,
well,
I find him in particular is that way, and I've talked with other people who know him better also, somewhat skeptical of how well to how much reliability and place of his stuff.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that oftentimes if people have a scientific credential or somehow, then people automatically assume that there's been an awful lot of scientific research done in terms of the cases that are in books. And I think the fact of the matter is it's almost the opposite. When you start talking to a lot of the people with higher degrees, basically they look at other books and collate them with the reports.
Once again, the relationship between scientists and UFO.
Well, I've talked with some of the people, mainly on that level, and basically say, well, I don't want to dirty my hands, I don't have the time to go out and do the field research, and just sort of rely on prize cases. And I find the prize cases often are so distorted by the time they're literature.
Well, that's the biggest problem.
Cleansed in many ways. If they're drawings, the drawings have nothing at all to do with the original case. I've even found this when I've submitted papers to some of the journals that purposely will submit a drawing that the witness had. And even Flying Saucer Review has changed that and made it look symmetric. Made things that were drawn irregular in which the people said did not look regular. They changed them that way.
Yeah.
And I think the filtering has gone quite a few times.
Yeah, well, that was very evident with stuff that Brian James drew. He would get a sketch in the mail, for example, from Flying Saucer Review, a little handwritten note said, please refine, or something like that. Brian James was an excellent artist, and he came up with some really gorgeous designs. Unfortunately, they may not have been totally accurate with regard to the original case.
Anyway, I'll do a minor comment, minor in a sense.
Well, as far as the time element goes, in a study that I did with the Manitoba cases, I found that there did seem to be peak times based on the 24-hour clock, not making allowances for things like daylight savings and such. And I've seen other analyses done besides Vallée where there wouldn't seem to be peak times. However, the interpretation of the peak times leave the most to be desired. I don't think it's the peaks that are in question. I'm sure there exist peaks, but exactly why the peaks might exist would be.
I would assume that it may very well be just a social phenomenon you're measuring, and the business also of like what days of the week do you get most reports.
More like Keel, yeah.
And of course most reports in the books are what they got out of newspapers. Other people pointed out, well, there are slow days
Yes.
when UFOs know what they're going to write about. So you find the pattern really doesn't tell you about quote-unquote UFO activity, whatever that is even defined would be individually think of as being a UFO.
Yeah.
The feeling mine may be a little bit different than some other people's.
Well, I did like...
But whatever that is, what you're measuring is a social phenomenon and not somehow objective, measurable phenomenon in the external world that gave rise to a report for whatever reason. And I have a suspicion that's what's happening in this theory of except maybe some kinds. I suspect maybe some kinds of UFOs do have a time correlation. I must say I find it a little bit weird to work with this whole bunch of the IFOs. First collect those first, and then from that work around. I'd rather have a model where I sort of look for those kind of patterns.
Well,
and then sort of have substantiated maybe my scientific model, if you want, rather than just sort of groping in the dark, which seems to be most of what's going on.
Well, it's obvious that some patterns do exist. For example, I'm convinced nocturnal lights happen mostly at nighttime.
By definition.
That's why they're going
I suspect part of it is that.
Yes.
I suspect probably with some kind of UFO phenomena, which in fact maybe hypnotic trance states, you may find a 3 o'clock correlation, because that may have to do in terms of sleep rhythms.
Yes.
When one is in that kind of a state where you can, when you woken up because of the noise or what have you, or in sort of this never dream state in between. So that may very well be why. Lots of the real weirdy type UFO reports, be they abductions or, or what have you, are reported at those times because you're in this in between.
Again, that points out the sociological aspect of ufology. If there is a peak at 3 a.m., for example, that may be due to some social factor, what is it and why? How does it work? In that regard, again, sociologists should really take a look at UFOs.
It's a logical time to be proceeding home from a wedding reception.
Yeah.
But I think there may be at least a partial down-to-earth explanation, and that is that, without getting strung out on this 3 a.m. business, but the early morning hours is when the atmosphere often is in its most settled state. It's density stratified, and therefore subject to different levels of refractive capability from the ground on up, so that you can have discrete density boundaries. You can have mirroring. Within density layers, you'll have light paths peculiar to that density state, and in fact you can have one point source of light, an object, which usually at night will at least be a point source of light, splintered. If the observer's eye is in just the right position, can be splintered up into numerous images, each traveling through, from which the light is traveling through different density layers. And insofar as having lights which seem to travel with the observer, this could in fact be in consequence of a distant light source. In my preliminary chat with the chairman the other day, he brought up a place such as the piggyback yard. Very high, I don't know how many thousands of watts of illumination are available there. Very piercing illumination, sodium lamps. And if you catch that in the right way, you could see that an enormously long distance away, either by refraction and even further by reflection. And if you were to, if the atmosphere were of a sufficient state of steadiness, you could go tearing after a thing at 100 miles an hour for as long as you'd hold out, and it would seem to be following or keeping pace with you.
The famed following phenomenon, in some respects.
Yeah.
Something like this. I think one could check on that part, trying to separate the close encounters from nocturnal lights. And they are, and as far as evidence is concerned, they're very different. I don't remember exactly, but is there a peak for close encounters?
Yes. However, see, then you can introduce another type of thing: explained close encounters and unexplained close encounters. The same with nocturnal lights. It's very easy to do a statistical study of nocturnal lights in general, but then do a study also on the unexplained nocturnal lights that aren't airplanes and balloons and Venus and what have you. See if there's some statistical correlations and peaks in there.
But what our friend here was saying is that you can never hope, at least what I think is, I would, you can never really hope to eliminate all the explanations for something like that. The atmosphere is a strange thing. I would never have suspected that.
Well, I think most people, at least whenever I've been to UFO conferences for the last 10 years, have basically said that you don't get anything out of nocturnal lights for all the work you put into it. It's like that's why most people like to be at Ted Phillips or Loescher or people like that, is that will concentrate on more bizarre, potentially more fulfilling themes such as physical trace cases or alleged document sightings. Basically, for at least a decade or more, I've said that nocturnal lights are, I won't say a waste of time, but you sure don't get much out of it.
No,
So I think nocturnal lights is basically a thing that was looked at more deeply in the 50s, maybe early 60s, but I don't think that many people will spend time on it. Or ain't that interested anyway, other than get reports of them.
Well,
So you
that's
go out and
interesting.
investigate.
That's interesting because in 75, 76, Grant Cameron, for example, did an enormous amount of research into what was nicknamed Charlie Red Star in Manitoba. And I was able to get some of its files, and just from the little bit that I've got, there must be at least 175 reports of a red or white ball bobbing around the sky. And it was entirely a nocturnal light phenomenon, except with, well, okay, almost entirely. There were a few daylight sightings, but they were in a very, very small minority compared to the vast amount of nocturnal lights. And it was so popular that people would hold Charlie Red Star parties out at Carmen. And they would sit around the microwave towers or in the middle of somebody's field. And I have very accurate reports of traffic jams on farming roads in the middle of no place, where people would park their cars along the sides of roads for miles on end, just trying to get a view of the famous Charlie Red Star. And occasionally they would be rewarded to see something bobbing along. Grant was into lights at the end of the road for quite a long time. And he and some individuals were convinced that they were probe ships or such and such a type of spacecraft and had different propulsion and such a color of a spacecraft and this sort of thing. So I think there still is an interest in nocturnal lights, although I would agree with John that many people are tending to go away from nocturnal light research and concentrate
Yeah, I
on the
think
more.
that's somewhat of an anomaly in itself.
Yeah.
Someone's spending that much time.
Yeah.
I don't know what he got out of for all of the effort.
Well,
Mostly when, at least in Alberta, when I met people who got real keen on it and spent all that time, and spent 6 months or a year on it, got burned out. Because they realized all the time they had put on that instead of, building model boats or whatever else they
Yeah.
could spend their time on. And basically all they had was a big pile of a lot of funny red lights. And got no further along and didn't really have a feeling of how they could get any further along by just collecting
sure.
reports of lights.
Yeah, there was a lot of evidence too of some people fabricating Charlie Red Stars. So it's hard to.
Well, if I had a hamburger concession, I'd be inclined to hire a shill to go out there with that
Well, let's
light.
speculate that the mayor of Carmen was behind the whole thing, trying to get people to put Carmen on the map. So there's that problem too. Okay, what discipline is best suited to study UFOs? Well, the astronomers have been stuck with it for quite a long time now, and I think that's due almost entirely to individuals such as Dr. Hynek, who managed to keep his reputation relatively intact through 30 years of UFO research. And very often the astronomer is asked, well, what are UFOs? And tell me all about it. And surely you must know something. In fact, astronomers are people too, and may not be that informed of, example, the appearance of certain types of aircraft at night or certain meteorological phenomena. So they too will make misidentification, which raises the question of then who? And I don't know. Or should astronomers still be stuck with the UFO problem? Richard, what do you think of this?
I don't know. Much of the discussion has been showing that everything's very speculative. The attitude I have towards it is that you can put an awful lot of effort without getting anything hard out, and it's almost not worthwhile. I don't think that Martin was saying that research scientists are lazy. In some senses that's true, and in some senses they're afraid of getting involved with something that has a less than reputable appearance to it. But the whole point is, the one time that I got a little bit interested in it, I started looking to see if there was any hard stuff anywhere, and there appears to be essentially none. You hear reports of hard stuff someplace, but when you dig into it, there isn't any.
You get the feeling it was awfully hard for a long time. One has one's own research interests, and they seem so much more rewarding. That's really what I mean by lazy. Everyone has their own, it's true of science in general, everyone has, quite apart from UFOs, everyone has their own little corner that they work out, and they find that's very interesting. You go along, and discover, yes, isn't this fascinating, I've discovered that neutrinos have mass, or whatever. Oh yes, well, actually supernovae are much more interesting.
Well, I think the biggest problem, and it's recurring here too, is the idea that I feel what should be talked about, if you're going to talk about it, is what can be done. For example, nocturnal lights. The problem with nocturnal lights is they're transitory, they're seen very brief periods of time. No one can take a spectrum of it or do anything with it or catch up with the light or things like that. So there's essentially nothing you can do to it. And the few sightings of physical evidence, usually there's nothing you can do with that either. I mean, you can measure patterns, you can make linear measurements. Unless you get something hard, then what can we do?
To the sociologist or the psychologist, though, there's plenty of hard data.
Oh, right.
Themselves.
Right.
So maybe it should be more their field than hardcore.
Well, I think
physical
that
stuff.
the field it is only this because my bias would be there shouldn't be any UFO phenomena. Basically, what UFO phenomena is about is the fact that you presumably have some anomalous reports that just don't seem to fit in. And I think maybe what has been all the fuss about it is that sometimes when people come with these reports on a day-to-day basis, they're actually observing something very strange rather than having someone say to them, well, gee, I just don't know what it is. They basically have told them either you've done a hoax or you don't understand that it was Jupiter, or then someone goes and investigates and discovers that Jupiter wasn't going to be up for 2 hours. And then deal with it. It seems to me that
That's true.
the UFO phenomenon is basically one in terms of scientific method problems, philosophy or sociology knowledge. That's really what, in a sense, what UFO phenomena has some meaning. Basically, to me, what we have is potentially, at its best, a catalog of, if they're well documented, both in terms of anecdotal history, well documented, and also in terms of online kind of reports in which we do the sightings and recorded ones in which we do the field. Basically, what we have is maybe the best catalog of reports which probably won't really have any scientific meaning until people in more traditional sciences have some way of getting a handle on it. For instance, one that has become more popular in the last few years is the business of earthquake doctrine, which presumably only begins to make understand scientifically when you begin to have some ability to predict that you'd have this potentially kind of phenomenon that would give rise to a luminescence prior to earthquakes in certain regions. And you actually can go through the anecdotal records and see that we have records going back thousands of years. Then it begins to make some scientific sense and they can help you to interpret the various scientific models that give rise to a luminescent phenomenon, whether it be physioelectric effect or outgassings of hydrogen or methane. And the same thing with ball lightning and many of the other phenomena, which I think in retrospect they look back probably to UFO reports. It seems to me that in a sense the crux of the problem from the standpoint of sociology of knowledge, or just how people, in another way of looking at it, how the general populace deals with professional scientists and so on, is we have apparently some reports of things which we just don't understand very much about. And it might be that really what I wish was a situation where we at least had a catalog of these things, transient events or whatever you want to call them. Find some name that wasn't UFO, that wasn't loaded that way, which could then potentially, if it was encoded and put in the right format, be potentially information that for some people give them ideas as to what kind of research they might do, or on the other hand might be a way of potentially testing out certain theories about the real world, which I suspect would come not so much from UFO research, but would come from more traditional disciplines, be they atmospheric physics, or geology, or what have you. So to my own way of knowledge, there is no science of UFO in that way, because I don't think we're studying any thing, as was pointed out earlier. Maybe you can use scientific methods to try and get a handle on what's out there. Maybe just a sense of a clue as to what disciplines might this be relevant to.
Well, as far as naming the UFO phenomenon you mentioned, transient, and figuring out a name, well, UFO, well, it started out as flying saucers, of course, and that was obviously too silly, so then they came up with UFO, and in a recent issue of the Journal of the Royal Astronomical Society, the fellow put out the theory of TOPA, for transient optical phenomena of the atmosphere. he's proposed that that be used now instead of
Well,
UFO.
there have been a lot of proposals. I think there's some excellent papers even in the so-called content report. Some of the people there, I think, have really have correct assessment in the sense that we do probably, in fact, have some phenomena going on. We've even looked at here for the content committee, which are new phenomena. And they should be looked at seriously by scientists. There's certainly more people involved with that. And they have more. Or that maybe exist elsewhere in the universe, and people are seeing the little straight lines, and it seems to me proof enough that there's life on Mars. Whereas a professional astronomer back then would say, well, that's not proof. We have some rather rigorous ways. There's a difference between belief and speculation and scientific methodology. I think a lot of the problem is a lot of UFO people, even people with scientific credentials, are basically doing their UFO science as an amateur. And as a professional, they're somehow getting upset because professional scientists are saying, well, that just won't hold.
I don't agree that changing the name to TOPA is going to eliminate the silly aspect, because you're going to encounter TOPA cases of encounters and abductions.
Part of what I'm arguing, though, is in fact, even a book like Phil Klaus, depending upon how you look at it, is basically in the sense of UFOs. Sure. Although it seems that somehow people who are UFO people somehow think, hey, this guy's attacking us and all that. Well, in some cases that's justifiable. On the other hand, people should thank him on one level of saying, hey, you pointed out some of these sightings, in fact, are probably caused by low light or like low light, whatever that means. But you thank him. I think there's a certain amount of paranoia hang up with some UFO researchers that someone can, in fact, interpret certain phenomena. I think ways somehow they can have some intrusion,
Well,
attack on their field.
Well, I'm very encouraged by the Journal of UFO Studies, because it's refereed. It's a refereed journal. One big problem in UFO research right now is there doesn't seem to be UFO research peers. That is, a person can call himself a UFO researcher and publish articles, and many other ufologists will buy it outright. And I think one of the biggest functions of individuals like Klass and the late Menzel and Tabbs, for example, are to point out flaws in the investigations of UFO researchers and to encourage ufologists to develop more refined techniques and a better analysis, and not to screw up, if you will, because that is something that a lot of ufologists are at fault. And it's individuals like that who do serve a very useful purpose in ufology, even though they are, quote, anti-ufological in their attitudes. And I was relating an anecdote earlier today where when James Randi was in town, I sat down with James Randi, and he eventually asked me to become a member of the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, because we found our attitudes regarding UFOs were exactly the same: objective scientific investigation of UFOs. And yet the end result is a little bit different from various points of view.
I think that there's to me, a rather interesting relationship between the astronomers and the psychologists and sociologists. It took an awful long time for the astronomers to get the Earth into its proper place in the solar system, let alone in the galaxy and the universe. But even though the majority of people have been persuaded of the Earth's position relative to other things, we still see ourselves as being the center of it all, don't we? And from this perspective then, and going back to what was said earlier, it seems quite appropriate then to suppose that if there are other civilizations at a more advanced state, as indicated by the age of the stars, assuming there are planets circling those stars, that these older civilizations would find us an interesting study. But I don't think, for one thing, if such civilizations exist, that it would be a bagatelle for them to come visit us. It's probably very resource intensive, whatever resources mean over there. And secondly, did you ever try to get a grant for a follow-up study?
Yes, very good, very good. I just want to refer back to something that Richard had said here. You had mentioned that you looked at some of the UFO documentation and you said that there was no really good, is that a correct paraphrase? Or?
I just said that there was no hard evidence.
Okay, no hard evidence. Okay,
Nothing hard that you can use.
Okay. What would you consider hard evidence?
I really don't know. I guess with nocturnal lights, if you could have spectra to examine, to take a look at what's producing the light, that's at least a little bit more where you can begin to get some idea. For example, the nocturnal lights that we study all the time, the stars, the sort of data that was initially gathered was spectra, and you try to interpret the spectra on the basis of what you had in the physical laboratory, and thereby make an interpretation, make a model, as suggested. As Norm Davison suggested, pieces of something, though that's very tricky to me. You can find pieces of lots of things that doesn't necessarily mean it's from a UFO or something. It's an unidentified thing.
Younger picking up meteorites from years ago.
Right. Yeah. And so I really don't know. I think that when you examine the observations that have been made, the observations themselves don't lend themselves to making a fruitful model. And so there you're stuck. If you can examine the observations in some fashion where you get some sort of a model where you can then try and make some measurements of something hard, then maybe you can go.
Maybe a useful model, because some of them are like multiple witness radar visual sightings, for example, of apparent craft.
Of apparent craft. Okay, it's a model of a craft. What do I do with it?
Doesn't this imply something about what's going on? Either, for example, that the report itself is a
Well,
hoax, or that there's something going on there that's...
Perhaps, but it doesn't allow me, in my discipline, to do anything with it. Unless I can go out and look at it, or with my instruments that I understand how they function, what can produce results with them, or if I can go out and get a piece of something. But if I listen to anecdotal evidence from people, I have no way of dealing with that. I have no experience in that.
Even where there has been an almost hard sighting of stuff within a couple of years ago, where there were impressions in the field, I understand that there was no forensic work done whatsoever to determine whether minute residues of some sort, either on the plant material which was altered, or for that matter within the depressions in the ground itself. There's no forensic work done whatsoever. Plaster cast will tell you, maybe what kind of a tire the guy had on his vehicle. That's about all.
The most analysis apparently that I know of was done on the Delphos case, where the soil was analyzed there, and apparently they found the soil up to a depth of 14 inches had been deprived of its ability to reabsorb water. If it hadn't just been dehydrated, it would not reabsorb water again. And they're mystified as to what type of, quote, radiation, which is a very broad word to use.
Well, it wouldn't reabsorb water if it was deprived of all its humic content, and by heat, or if the humic content was oxidized, all you had was mineral mass. Then all you could do, you could add water to it, but it wouldn't absorb.
A big problem in the analysis of things like landing ring samples is, of course, that ufologists are unfunded, and to get it taken to an independent research lab and say, please analyze this soil sample from a UFO ring, they'll say, well, certainly this will be a bill for $500 or $1,000. In most cases, because ufologists are paupers, there's not going to be a great deal of analysis done.
Okay, well, that's why U.S. Air Force, they were doing a lot of work. Did they do forensic studies?
Well, they see at the planetarium. This is the Halmstad case in '75, and individuals at the planetarium had limited resources. Now, they took them to get analyzed back at the museum, and the museum has limited agricultural testing that they can do. And, as I understand it, they did what they could, and they did publish some sort of report on it, which I haven't been able to obtain, unfortunately. But they weren't able to do very much with it.
Would you be willing to look at some special program?
Right? Sure.
You're the first astronomer who has said he would. The ones I've approached so far said they wouldn't unless they took the photographs themselves.
Oh, I'd be very interested in finding out how they were taken.
Yeah, well, the States put together some pretty sophisticated equipment. Well, Project Starlight International. The research director wasn't an astronomer, apparently. Dr. Daniel Harris, I don't know if you know.
I know I see Dan Harris, he's a radio astronomer.
Yeah, I think it's the same show. I'm not sure, because this is coming secondhand from Ray Stanford, who was the managing director of this organization. They also collected magnetometer readings and gravimeter readings from the same phenomena. And apparently they found a correlation between the magnetometer and the gravimeter readings, just an initial correlation. Now, this is the type of hard evidence that various scientists have been asking for, and yet, ironically, we can't get anybody to analyze it. He's had enough for us to do. So, I'll get the word to it.
I think it all comes down to the crux of the scientist. If you study the details of the evidence, he doesn't want to be the one to say, turns around and says, yes, UFOs do exist as extraterrestrial.
But scientists didn't even do that anyway. I mean, the whole idea is if you're looking at something in the evidence, you're not proving or disproving, unless you formed the model beforehand. But if you're just looking at some spectra, it gives you some suggestion. You need lots. That's the problem.
Here we have an example of where we've been suggesting that physical sciences may not be involved directly in UFO research. Yet there is a need for physical sciences to be involved, for example, in regard to this hard evidence of spectra, gravimeter, other readings that they've taken. So I still say it's very necessary for some individuals in the physical sciences to be involved, whether they be atmospheric physicists or geologists or what have you, because there is a necessity for this type of research.
I don't know how hard that is. I think that a lot of papers, if you read through professional journals now, in fact have something to do with UFO phenomena. It's luminescent phenomena being observed. They just call them something else. They don't. So I think, in fact, if you read through some of the geophysical journals, that you'll find, in fact, papers are being written on UFO. Just they don't call it UFO, and they have a few references to UFO. In fact, it's been called something else. I think, that has
I was
it's
quite.
just, I think that once they're getting to those stages, then they might find useful something towards the amateurs and collectors.
The only problem with those type of things is once they get to the media, for instance, with this glowworm theory that was talking around last year, I don't know if that was the exact insect that we're talking about. But,
Callahan and Mankin.
Yeah, well, the problem with that is the media picks that up and says, okay, UFOs don't exist, UFOs are glowworms or bugs or whatever, and then that's completely dropped. The scientific community is not aware of what's going on.
Well, so they're going to do that. So what? He didn't say that in his paper.
No, I know he didn't. But the media picks it up
the
that
whole
way.
phenomenon, large part of the phenomenon is the media created one anyway.
That's right.
So,
But
I don't think
90%
that
of your scientists who are a little bit further removed from the phenomenon, but some of you appear to be here, that is the only contact that they have.
well,
With
because
that.
I'm not too interested in converting science, but I'm merely
Unless
interested
you
in
get
finding
some
out
of
the
them
solutions to problems, and there are people with scientific backgrounds who, in fact, I think are doing research that could perhaps potentially be enriched by being aware of some kind of reports that are coming. That's all I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, Callahan and Mankin had published a report on the spruce budworm in Applied Optics. It was very interesting that Applied Optics also published Bruce Maccabee's investigation of the New Zealand films. And it carried on back and forth between Maccabee and I forget the name of the other individual who countered his arguments back and forth for a little while, but I think it was a total of about 4 papers published in Applied Optics before the editor of Applied Optics finally threw up his hands and said, okay, well, we've had enough of this sort of thing, let's go on to something else.
Yeah. I think my point really is that in fact there are people who are doing research which is quite relevant to some of the reports that we get.
Yeah. But
And they're not necessarily particularly.
well, my big peeve about the Maccabee papers in Applied Optics is that the editor did refuse to cease the argument, and my argument is that the UFO is a light phenomenon, and it is definitely should be considered under the guise of Applied Optics a little more seriously. I think it was the stigma of UFO that might have thrown the whole argument off. And I think it's very sad that a journal devoted to the study of optical phenomena would not wish to continue pursuits into UFO research. I think that's a big problem too.
My concern, as long as they're involved in the phenomena, I couldn't care less. And I think as long as they're aware of the problems. Speaking about UFOs, I think the fact of the matter is they need to research, which is someone else might call UFO research.
I think we'll skip on to the 9th question that I had down, which was, should the public be better educated about UFOs? And I think we might have touched on this on 2 occasions. The public, of course, knows what it reads or hears, or sees on TV or hears on the radio. And the trouble is that there's an awful lot of wrong, incorrect, biased, etc. information that you get from the media in this way. And I think the public is generally uneducated as regards UFO research. Things that pop into my mind again, as I was just talking about Maccabee, was I forget the astronomer in England that came up with his own theory which made the wire services, was it? Does anybody remember the well-known name in astronomy who came out into the London Times, I think, and openly stated that the New Zealand sighting was definitely a bolide. Pardon me? No, it wasn't for that. But it was some well-known astronomer.
The radio astronomy?
No.
Anyway, we picked 25.
Yes. Trivia, UFO trivia. However, it made the wire services, and it made extremely large front-page story to the effect that the UFOs seen in New Zealand were in fact bolides, and he knows because that's what he said. And a lot of the public accepted that because it was printed in the newspaper. And I think that type of thing is not nice.
Well, that type of thing crops up all the time. One case I was working on was the photograph was taken of a track of what was supposed to be a UFO setting. It was hovering approximately 3 or 4 degrees, I guess, above the horizon. RCMP conference the photograph on it, hovered there for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then in about 10 seconds it set and left a nice little path, which after that photograph made an angle of somewhere around 23 degrees with the horizon. Supposedly he sent the photograph out to NRC, and astronomer sent it back and said that was Vega setting. Only the astronomer knows that Vega doesn't set at an angle of 23 degrees at 46 degrees latitude. But this is the type of thing that gets out in the newspaper. It was obviously Vega, because Vega happened to be in the same area as the UFO. So here's a perfectly good photograph that is begging analysis, and it got no further than that.
Well, there again, you're running into your problem of light diffraction. If you're that low towards the horizon, you're looking for much bigger atmosphere than if you were looking straight up. It's quite possibly that the star or an object could set there and appear to be setting at that angle. It's not actually setting at that angle.
Is that possible from refraction? Is it a difference of that much?
Maximum refraction is about half a degree.
pictures from the next one.
No, but I don't understand the exact sighting.
Well, we're looking at a difference of about 20.
But what was actually photographed? What shows up on the photograph?
What shows up on the photo? I can show you. First photo.
Is it time exposure?
Yeah, it's a time.
Okay. What direction was it was it facing?
That was northwest of it. It's in there, I can't remember. But I checked with our astronomical consultant, and he informed me when Vegas that first set, and it was about 2 or 3 hours after that first one. So it's obvious that the astronomer didn't even want to look into it. He just realized Vegas in that area, so it had to be that.
Well, another example that springs to my mind is, are some of the landing greens that occurred in Manitoba that Dr. McNamara made a crack at explaining. He explained everything as a fairy ring mushroom, which is unfortunate because in most of the cases they could not in any way be attributable to the fairy ring mushroom, and yet this person of fairly extensive scientific background was going on record in the media and in several other sources as publicly stating that this was the reason. He wasn't saying that this was a reason, this is a possible reason. He was saying this was the reason, and he was blatantly wrong. And this is, again, an example of the anti-ufology that's occurring. So I think that the public should be a little better educated about UFOs. I'm not sure exactly how they should be a little better educated about this.
It seems this is part of a larger problem in terms of they're not well educated as to science or what scientific method is. So if you go around, I don't know what the figures would be, but wouldn't at all be surprised if you asked people what astronomy studies, and then we'll talk about signs of the zodiac. Yeah.
About 50%.
Yeah.
I think the problem of education about UFOs is basically a reflection of the problem that people have about having an adequate background in science. People could argue, I suppose, the same with their historians on literature and anything else. It is a problematic of science education.
Yeah.
So just divorce from that.
And
And the ability to have some critical skills. So it's somewhat a reflection of the problem the person that was investigating.
I think we're just suffering from a general phenomenon that occurs in science, which some people are trying to stop. And that is, when a scientist, quote, discovers something and makes his first publication, a press announcement, he often gets in trouble because he hasn't given time to go through the peer review process and whatnot, and time to see if he's right. And it would seem to me that the UFO reports and the criticism being carried out in the press is just an example of this whole problem in science, publishing in the press first before you have it considered in a place where you can be subject to peer review.
I think this gets back to an issue that was raised maybe peripherally earlier, and that is the fact that there is no professional researchers, so anyone can be. And it's usually the ones that have communication with the clinicians on the second and fourth Thursday in the month.
Yeah.
They're the ones that get most of the play in the press, which is most people's exposure. By most people, I mean even scientists, engineers, and people of this sort. In most cases, their only exposure to what the field is about.
Sure.
But it gives them so it's kind of related also to business of certification of what is a UFO research or what is UFO research anyway, and also the relationship between journalism and the press and quote unquote the science of ufology.
Well, I certainly hope Stanton Friedman's going to be enjoying himself in New Brunswick because he's no more than a hop, skip, and a jump from where a woman that a few of us have encountered, Vanetta Chenard.
I think most people are from that.
Yeah, yes. Well, I was one of many that entertained her in my home for a few 2 hours to listen to their story about, again, Venusians on the 2nd or 3rd Saturday of every month or whatever.
Yeah, I was thinking of her in particular.
Yes. yes.
Wasn't she the one that thought the entire...
Although it is interesting that it is interesting when I was at NRC, they spent a lot of time talking to me about, in fact, they have taped interviews on record and so on. But it's interesting they had the same text.
Yeah.
Condon and others did of somehow promoting people like that as being representative of the field of
Yes.
UFO research.
Well, Manitoba's other claim to fame is the fact that Vanetta spends her winters in Manitoba.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, though.
No, I had the reverse on her. If she entertained me for one day and one night when I was out that way, I spent a day in her space.
Thing in the middle of the field?
Yeah, right. What I was going to say, I think the UFO myth is really, it's got out of hand in the media. This is obvious. If you take that percent of the public that, quote, believes in UFOs, which is a terrible question to ask in the first place, but nevertheless, pollsters do that anyway. They say, oh, sure, it's possible. There's a lot of universe out there. There's no reason why there can't be other people visiting it. But that is the automatic association with the UFO and the public. So if you say, does the public need educating? Yes, they do, but how are you going to do it? Because they're so far gone now in the ETH method.
Well, TV shows and the movies and so on that were mentioned very early in the discussion today have done an awful lot in that regard. Sure.
Yeah, well, Project UFO is one of the best comedy shows I've ever seen, I must say. But a lot of people, when they say, when they mention such and such a case, I find that when they say they saw such and such a case on TV, they are, in many instances, referring to something we saw on Project UFO.
Yeah, I didn't think it was comedy. I thought it was being propaganda.
Yeah,
Basically, it was trying to say that this was how U.S. Air Force Blue Book did their investigation.
That's why I thought it was
And
comedy.
it's interesting, I have a friend in Colombia, she's mentioned playing in Colombia. So it's not only North America, but it's now being rerun down there in Latin America.
Yeah, you can expect a lot of sightings from there now, eh?
Well, they've been having a lot anyway the last few years. Perhaps the hotspot of the world the last few years.
Okay, and we can end up heading for our the final question I have down here. Possibly another will be raised, and that is there value in UFO research? And we've sort of headed in the direction of this from several angles during the course of this discussion, and certainly from some aspects there is very little value in UFO research from a historical or a humanities aspect of UFO research. There is a great deal of value. But this again brings in what discipline is best suited. Will proof ever come? What proof is there? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I personally think there is value in UFO research, both in the physical and a humanities aspect. And for various reasons stated during the course of this seminar. And I find it unsettling that there still is a great stigma attached to the subject and a great deal of hesitancy for scientists to want to talk about it. Although, on the other hand, I can sympathize with the fact that they are indeed working in other fields, on other subjects, and getting money and funding for that aspect. So why should they be attracted to a subject that has attracted so much ridicule and silliness over the years? I can sympathize with that position.
What difference do you think it would make even if there were funds allocated? What difference?
Well, I wouldn't be $20,000 in the red right now.
Personally,
That's what I've been doing my last 4 years out of my own
well,
pocket.
you're my personal.
That's what makes me
That's not
angry.
important, though.
Well, to
we
me
choose
it
to
is.
do that. That's our
That $500,000
I think
for
one has to
condom.
confront that. One of the reasons why it hasn't been supported is not just because of conspiracies, but because I have a suspicion that most of the questions that are in the back of my mind, the business of extraterrestrial life and what if any connection it has to UFO reports, whether it be all of them or a very, very small percentage of them, I have a suspicion, in fact, those answers will all come from UFO research anyway. It basically will come either from people who are searching for signals, or because of our space probes, we'll get there first, or because of some philosophical set we have in the world that changes so that the burden of proof is not matter of proving that they are here, but proving elsewhere, but proving that they aren't elsewhere. I rather suspect they won't come too much from these odd collection of empirical observations that we put together in this garbage can term called UFO. I have a suspicion that many of the other scientific problems that may in fact be represented in the empirical world by some of these odd sightings won't come, dynamic won't come from the sightings, the dynamic will come from traditional disciplines. So I would say that one, even if one is interested for whatever reasons in this collection of oddities and reports, what difference would it make, even if it was fun?
I think what we do is speed up the input of some of these unknown aspects of traditional disciplines that already exist. That's one thing.
I don't understand. Talk more.
Well, one of our consultants is a meteorologist, and he's looking at a theory now which involves wave theory. Presumably, up to now, most of the research in wave theory has been done on a one- or two-dimensional basis. He's pointed out quite clearly that there's a third dimension to every wave. There has to be, because a wave is simply dissemination of energy in our three-dimensional continuum. And he's been doing some surprising research on this third dimension of waves. And he has demonstrated that it is possible for this energy in the third dimension of waves to be in a different wavelength, different frequency from the two dimensions that you're studying right now. For instance, he's demonstrated with his theory that ocean waves can generate waves in a third dimension vertically, which can appear as light. There's a lot of sightings now
It still
over
seems to me
Lakeland.
that the real science, though, didn't come from the sightings. The science came from
Well, his impetus
observations.
into examining this came from the fact that there are a lot of strange lights reported over
Okay, but
water.
that's probably similar to maybe the impetus of someone read a science fiction, Jules Verne or someone else, and then came up with some perhaps fruitful.
Well, you see, what we're dealing with are visual phenomena that we don't understand. And if we take a look at them, analyze them, then it might help us understand some of our
You have to have a
disciplines that
scientific
exist.
model to make sense of them. And I suspect that those scientific models in general will come from other routes.
Well, I don't know. It depends what comes first.
Because this is
The
such a
harmony design.
mishmash of sighting reports that you've got now, which don't have really much in common with each other. And I
Yes.
rather suspect that the sightings that will bear on what he's talking about would be one of the million.
Well, I don't know. There's been a whole flood of sightings lately over the western end of Lake Ontario that have been reported. They seem to occur in regular times during the year. And he's become interested in this. And that's led him into this wave theory type of. Now, I suspect that a lot of what he's doing may tie in with what Persinger's doing as well. In fact, Persinger may be just looking at a subset of this third-dimensional energy wave.
Whatever he's looking at. I'm not
Sure, whatever, right. But he's looking at what are earthquakes? Simply energy being dissipated by
Well,
wind.
it is interesting, if you read the Carmen Committee report, basically it tells you his papers. It's not new. Call it a UFO.
If there's nothing there, why are the government so worried about covering it up?
No, the issue isn't whether there is or isn't anything there. I guess the issue is how do you make science? Is it worth funding scientifically just because it got weird reports?
But no matter what the reports are, the government always seems to cover it up. A particular case of this is Chris could phone up and say, I'd like to report a UFO, which is happening. The government says, well, we don't keep reports of UFOs. So he writes away and he gets a whole file back of UFO reports that the government has kept.
Well, government is secret general, I think. I don't think it just has to do with UFOs. The military is that way. No matter what you're talking about. It's not a lot of it has to do with just their style. And there's no question but that they are giving UFO reports with that bearing in terms of phenomena going on that are being interpreted as radar blips or what have you. And I have, like I suspect most other people, I know people who are or have contact with military intelligence, it is a day-to-day thing for them to get UFOs sightings visual radar. But I'm not quite sure if it's relevant to this big collection of luminescent sightings and even more bizarre types of sightings we haven't called UFO. It seems to me there really is a problem we have, at least those people that have been collecting these reports, if we expect scientific people to spend a lot of time and energy on the burden is sort of on us to show how it is relevant. As I say, I have a suspicion that basically what is being collected is the usefulness is basically is a collection of strange reports. If they're put in the right format, maybe it can make sense to someone who already has a training in some more traditional kind of a discipline, because of the work that he or she is doing, believes that there might be a luminescent phenomenon and goes and looks. Because it certainly is not, science hasn't worked too much the other way around. Historically, I don't know why it should look any different for UFO research. It's not that everyone is picking on UFO research, or picking on Sasquatch or lake monsters or whatever. It's just like...
Sasquatches and lake monsters are marketable.
That's what
Yeah, I understand they've still got a car in the police station down at Warren on display. The police car that was hit there 2 years ago.
No, but yeah, well, you can certainly make a buck on UFOs, and there's no argument on that if you do it right.
Except that I guess why I may be a little bit strong on this is I get a sense by some people that they're not necessarily those here, but certainly may apply here, I don't know. But that there is somehow a discipline like the UFO research is a discipline in the same sense that astronomy or biology.
It's a system of analysis.
And I don't think that it is. It's just it's dealing with a collection of oddities, which for the only thing they have in common is sometimes there's nothing in common other than they're bizarre and the light. Sometimes not even a light. Some of them don't have a light. They're seen in the sky. Some of them aren't even seen in the sky.
Well, certainly, I mean,
very little correlation with each other.
Ufologists who delve into the
and I say this even because I'm trying, we haven't really gone into how you go about studying this pattern and stuff. But it seems to me, and I'll go maybe back on this, a lot of the people who discovered computers is to get a collection here and then try all sorts of correlations, sort of like Francis Bacon or guys like that. Everything that's yellow somehow has a correlation with each other. Everything that occurred on Tuesday nights between 2 and 3 will see if there's independent.
The problem
weird correlations that don't make a sense again unless you have some sort of scientific model or idea in the background.
Well, you don't necessarily need a model, but you need some adequate means of collecting the information in the first place. Like I'm a computer scientist, so obviously what goes in has got to be good data. Otherwise, what comes out is going to be garbage. The old ego complex. So if you're going to record reports from countless different sources and then sit down and try and analyze them, you're analyzing what's been fed in without asking any questions about where the data came from, how it's been used.
I think that's the
right, sure. So that's where, you see, that's where we need the money. If we're going to take input from sources, we've got to have some means of validating those sources, of training the people to collect the data.
It's a lot of money, is it worth it?
Is science worth it?
Well, I don't think that's an issue with science worth it, because the issue is within science, where do you allocate the funds? I think it's really is in the scope of that. Isn't that high priority as some people feel think it is?
Well, I've heard an interesting argument in regards to actual scientific funding. There was an astrophysicist arguing, a cancer researcher arguing over the value of each other's research. And it practically turned into a fist fight because neither one could say, yes, your research is more valuable than mine, I'll admit that. And it comes down to the question number 10 being a very important question. Is there a value in UFO research? And you have to worry about this. Raymond Fowler, in his latest book, Casebook of a UFO Investigator, which is essentially an autobiography, makes an astounding statement to be in print in a UFO book towards the end of his book, to the effect that civilian UFO research is at a dead end. Talked to several people who've been totally astounded by this statement and don't know what to make of it. You mean to say that we're not doing anything? And what are we doing this for anyways?
I think it may be a fairly just statement, because I think a lot of, if you've been around it for a while, you see a lot of people are reinventing the wheel.
Sure.
And I think the reason for that is most people who do UFO research don't really have any scientific background other than maybe high school physics and chemistry.
Fortunately,
they may be rational people. I think, although even many of the professional scientists who go into it, I find a lot of engineers who engineers by trade who become clinical psychologists when they go into the UFO field. They seem to sort of be able to switch disciplines by that. It's almost like they're able to do their sort of their background hobby that they really wanted to do with life when they get into the UFO field. There aren't that many practicing people with scientific backgrounds, in fact, are using that much their discipline. You'll even get someone like a psychologist here who will go into geophysics, basically, and get some UFO stuff.
It is an interdisciplinary subject. We have to concede that fact, but what discipline gets to start out as the proper discipline, and who gets what share of the pie.
Well, I would go back to the IFO thing. Basically, I think it's not too much different than making a catalog of identifying things. Basically, it's you may learn more about sociology of people and organizing knowledge and so on. But I think that each of the disciplines has sort of its own tradition.
Would that be true of the close encounter cases? I mean, the really bizarre ones.
Well, I'm more biased as the encounter ones basically are in the realm of hypnotic trance states and so on. I don't think they might bias them. They have anything to do with hypothetical extraterrestrial.
Oh, well, I'll buy the latter, but I don't know.
So to me, that becomes a question in terms of what kinds of altered states in the environment give rise maybe to set up hypnotic trance states.
But even, you're just producing a word. If you say, you're really saying, okay, to me, these bizarre occurrences are psychological. They're experiences.
Some are. Some are.
Or you
yeah,
may
I'm
be,
sure that's true.
or you may be dealing with a phenomena that triggers a psychological response.
Well, that's
You
basically
don't
what
know.
basically I've argued, and I've even, in a little book that I did, predicted what kinds of people maybe are more susceptible to that. But again, the disciplines that are relevant to that are not a discipline called UFO research. It's disciplines of physiology, maybe atmospheric physics or plasma physics.
I don't know, not everything really fits that picture either.
Of course not, but that's the problem with it. No more than if you want to study mosquitoes, you have entirely different kinds of skills and disciplines, and if you want to study the moon, or airplanes, or frisbees.
Now, you said earlier that Jacques Vallée's work was unreliable. All he does is to collect case histories from other people.
In most cases.
Yeah, I mean, this one has to do, because if you are interested in asking yourself, what are these cases, you can't rely entirely on your own field work, because there simply are. You'll never come across enough cases. You have to rely on other people's field work. Do you feel there's no value then in looking at other people's field work? If you did work at other
I think
people,
one should be very aware of the people that are collecting the data. For instance, when I did this sort of a booklet on the occupant cases in Canada, about 90 cases, and I knew at the time of writing, well over 100 now. But the fact of the matter is, most of them have been collected by a handful of people. And I think the fact of the matter is, if you looked at it, if you divided up the kinds of occupant reports you got there, you find the patterns, let's say, that Bill Allen got, are quite different than what Bordelot got, and quite different than what some of the other people got. So in fact, the case histories that they're getting, as much as anything, reflect the personalities of the investigators. And I begin to wonder then, well, just, what is it that I'm measuring here, even in these kinds of cases? I think not enough attention has been paid to the qualifications and the biases of the people who work in the cases. And this is particularly true of some of the more bizarre kinds of cases, such as the occupant cases, which a lot of people have been putting a lot of placing a lot of their bets on.
So what we've actually got is a whole bunch of files and cases from people who we don't know their particular background or their interests in the subject, and it's our jobs and our hobbies to get the relevant information out of these cases and classify it, put it in some form that can be understood more readily for us before it's like programmed into a computer.
But you're saying, you remind me a bit of someone who told me that when a person goes to a Jungian analyst, he dreams Jungian symbols,
when it comes from Freudian analysis to change Freudian symbols.
Yeah, to a certain extent, particularly occupant cases, at least in the ones I looked from Canada, I came to that conclusion, and I didn't go into it that way. I thought I think I see the pattern after I looked at all the
Yeah.
cases. You go read through Ferguson's book and you get certain kinds of things, and Bordelot's reports that he's done, you see the pattern. Now it may just be the personalities of these people that lends to the fact that they're interested in those kinds of cases, so those are the ones that get picked up. And if you or I were there, maybe we would have picked up ones they missed.
Yeah.
But one has to be very much aware of who's doing the investigating.
I mean, do you even find, for instance, the humanoids are different for different investigations?
Yeah, certainly. If you look at the ones from Quebec, particularly, an awful lot of ghostly things.
Because you can always say, if you want an argument against the extraterrestrial hypothesis, that the fact that they're all humanoids is a good argument against the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Well, we've got some that aren't humanized.
Oh, really?
People who don't. I've had some octopus-like ones from Alberta. I've been attacked by octopus things that came out. So for those people who are, put off by humanoid-looking aliens,
That's me.
that are quite weird. On the other hand, even if you want to play that game, why do we have to think that the actual pilots of the ships are the ones that are encountering? Maybe they're just now ready to go on for a while.
Oh, yes.
And you can play that speculation game.
Yeah. I think really you could amuse yourself.
The problem I have, I think, is